Well, first of all, if everybody please stand, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. The audience, so you may know, we're starting a little bit early tonight due to the snow, and I appreciate all the board members being able to make that to help some of the people who travel at the end of our meetings be able to get home, hopefully with a little less snow on the ground, possibly. So, as we go through our agenda tonight, as always, please remember our mission and our vision. So, we do have a quorum, so we'll get started here. Hearing of delegates, I see none. Communications to the board, nothing at this point. And so we'll move in to approve the agenda. I don't believe we've had any changes.
No changes.
Need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thanks, Todd. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Lanny. A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda approved. Moving into consent items, you should have received those with your board packet on Thursday or Friday morning. And we do have a few additional, wrong one. A few additional invoices for you to review if you'd like to quickly here.
Consent items and finance, all the finances are routine for the month. We see that our revenues are exceeding our expenditures. We do believe that will balance up the opposite direction by the end of the year, but things look very good right now.
Any other questions or comments on the consent items? Hearing none, when you're ready, we would need a motion to approve the consent items.
So moved.
Thank you, Andrea. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Todd. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent items approved. We'll go into the superintendent's report. Joe?
Up here. So we'll start with area education agencies, the AEAs. We are part of the Prairie Lakes Education Association, and there's a number of things that they do for us. And I thought it was important to highlight some of these things that area education agencies do for schools, and do specifically for our community schools, because these will become a topic in the legislative session that's coming up for us. Some general things that they do for all districts. They're a huge part of our special education process. They are the consultants for all of our special education. They're a big part of our technology and working with our IT people and putting in the framework and everything we need to deliver instruction to students. Professional development, always involved in different parts of that. We have a school improvement facilitator who's part of our professional development, sometimes very, very much a part of our professional development, sometimes farther away, depending on what the topic is and what we are in need of. Curriculum assessment, the ESSA, they're part of that. When you have a designation, to help you get the support that you need to review your curriculum, your resources, and then as well as student assessment, data analysis, and that's just a basic 5 things, but it's a lot. It's a lot that they provide for a school. One thing that I think is important to talk about is, they provide speech and language support and speech and language pathology. They provide physical therapy for our students who need it. They provide occupational therapy for our students who need it. That support for our students will certainly always be there. And if there is a reduction in AEAs, that support would go away for some of our most needy students. That would be very detrimental to the district. Now, certainly we would do everything in our that we could in our power to not let it go away, but then that would come at an additional expense. So either a loss of support or an additional expense, a reduction to the AEA would have a huge impact on the students in the Algonah Community District. So I listed some facts in there, and I won't go through specifically every piece, but all students are general students first. We're always trying to close the achievement gap among students with special needs by addressing quality universal instruction for all. That's what the AEAs are there for. They're helping us close that gap between a special needs student and our general education student by making our universal instruction the best it can be. They're not just for special education, and that's probably the message there. Sometimes that gets lost in what they do. They're much more than that. They partner with our districts. They partner with our families. If you know of a family or in your family who has a special education child, they partner with us to help provide the education and support that child needs. They're not there to simply make sure we are following laws and writing an IEP in the right way. They're with us to educate that child. The funding for our AEAs in special education in rural areas, there are some areas it needs to be improved. We live in a very rural, very sparsely populated part of the state where the AEA's ability to get to all of our schools and to provide the support they need to is hurt by some of the funding. And Prairie Lakes probably has been hurt by funding as much as anyone in the entire state, I would argue. And a further cut to that is certainly going to impact our kids. That will become something that becomes more and more of a topic in education here in the coming weeks as our legislative session starts. There will be discussions about the future of AEAs. There'll be discussions about future cuts to the AEAs, both which will hurt the children who come to our district. So I wanted you guys to be aware of that. I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to ask any questions about AEAs. Certainly, I will be advocating for the district with our legislators to keep our AEAs intact to meet the needs of our kids.
I know the session started today in Des Moines. Have you heard any information as far as, is it financial cuts or are they looking at programs?
I really haven't, Tom. We're getting a lot of, almost hearsay. That it's certainly a topic that's being discussed. When I met one-on-one with our legislators, they didn't have a lot of knowledge of it, but I know that we have Superintendent of State who have met with our governor as a group to discuss it and to how they could reduce it. So I don't specifically know if it's programs or a total cut, but that will be something to see in the coming weeks.
Okay.
Seems like they talked about it early. It seemed like even before sessions, even after, we were hearing a lot about it early.
Yeah,
So.
and the AEAs have been something that have had funding reduced over time. The number of AEAs reduced to 9. I don't know, we're probably looking at 15, maybe even more years ago than that now. So it's not new. We have flow through the tax dollars that from our district that goes straight through to the AEA. Every school district has that. That's a per pupil based thing, and that's how AEAs are funded. But they continued to reduce that amount, and even from the state level. So certainly something to keep an eye on, so that we can continue to meet the needs of our kids. Also wanted to do a short financial review. Like I said in consent items, our revenues versus expenditures continue to look good for FY24 and forecasted for the 5 years, and that's what the blue and red bar graph shows. The blue is our revenues, the red is our expenditures. You see that this is a forecasted bar, different than what our actual year-to-dates show, where we have more revenues than expenditures. We are anticipating to have slightly more expenditures. And again, that's because of on-time funding. Our certified number is larger this year, but we get the dollars for that next year. So we've known and been forecasting that we would deficit spend for this year. Then things look good. Revenues higher than expenditures, but we know that will change once we get out to FY28 and FY29. Now you can see they still look good here, But in my forecast, I have early retirement built in, you know, the changes we've already made. So you know, this shows that, you know, those changes would be impactful, they would be effective. In these forecasts that I make, there's always pieces that we put in, such as this model does assume we have 15 teachers who will retire over 4 years, 12 of those are replaced. So it's a reduction in the number of FTEs. It could be more than 15 that retire, but the reduction of FTEs would never be more than 3. We do have a fund balanced to deficit spend in FY28, and that's what I'll show in the next graph. Also figured into this, you know, I am anticipating us losing 40 to 50 students over the next 2 years, and that's just graduating class in comparison to what's coming in. That is figured in here, and things still look good, but we'll want to continue to monitor that. Our fund balance, this is what that graph shows, you know, the amount of cash we have, the amount of dollars that we have. It's strong. It has been strong. It grows FY24. That's some cash from Laverne that causes that to happen. We're able to maintain that even through some deficit spending. Our projected unspent authorized budget ratio will continue to remain above 10%, which is our board goal, to keep that above there. It will do that. And it will fall between 15 and 20%, which is the Iowa Association of School Boards recommendation. This is our to show that right here, a bar graph showing the UAB staying between 15 and 20, above 10%, meeting those goals. Finances look good, our forecasts look good. We worked hard to look at those, make the adjustments we need so that we remain solid. Some key assumptions that are built into the model, like I talked about, that we will decrease at least 40 students over the next 2 years. That's built in. 15 teachers will retire over 4 years, 12 of those being replaced. That's built in. A reduction in administration in FY26, -1 administrator. That is built in. It keeps the cash reserve levy in place at $900,000 per year. We could become too solvent and not be able to have the cash reserve levy, which that changes our model because that's $900,000 less dollars each year. Wouldn't change it for the positive, it would change it for the negative. So that's something that we'll have to monitor. This model assumes a minimum of a 2% salary increase for all staff. We've been far above that in recent years. It also assumes an annual SSA increase of 2%. We were above that last year. I believe we will be again this year. So it's very conservative for sure. Reorganization with Laverne has made forecasting a challenge. There's no doubt about it. There's more variables as we continue to kind of round it all up. When we get a year from now, we'll have a much better idea of our forecast. Not that we're lost unknowing right now, but there still are variables out there as we're receiving tax dollars and so on. Questions on that?
Does the $900,000 forecast cash reserve levy, is that mostly special ed deficit
It
spending?
is, yes.
Okay.
Actually, our special ed deficit's a little bit larger than that, but that's
Okay.
where that comes from. Yeah.
And what was our cash transfers from Laverne schools?
Oh, a little over $1 million. Are you talking just general fund or total?
General.
General fund?
Well, total if you want to. Just kind of want to get an idea.
Total, well, certainly more. Although we have kind of earmarked about $750,000 of their PEPAL dollars for the deconstruction of the school
Okay.
building. General fund cash, I don't know, $1.5
This
million.
says $4 million, but that's all of them.
Yeah, that's all of them. I would say general fund is closer to 1.5, maybe up to 2.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate the updates on that. We'll keep monitoring that so as we move.
Last piece I have on here, just school safety. We all know of the events at the Perry Community School District. Certainly our thoughts and prayers are with the Perry School District. I thought I would share just some of the pieces that we have in place. You know, school safety is something we're always looking at. You know, what can we do? What we're doing accomplishing what we want? Is it enough? We have emergency operations plans that are in place that are required by the state that we put in place with our local authorities. You know, those are things we hope we don't ever use, but we do have those. Those aren't public documents. Those are documents between us and those people. Our buildings review those with their staff on an annual basis. Our buildings are completely locked down, and visitors to our buildings are all buzzed in during school hours. We've recently upgraded our camera system to a first-class system with very intense facial recognition capabilities. Another great part of that system is our local authorities have access to it at any time. So if we ever had a terrible thing happen, they can actually go on our cameras to see where they would need to go if we weren't able to communicate that to them. We've trained all of our staff in ALICE training that's provided by our local officers. ALICE training, what that is, it's a civilian active shooter response training that we even expanded into bus drivers and on the buses last year. So we went a long ways with that. Our high school staff also reviews ALICE training with the students. They don't go through, but they review with it on what they would do in those situations. All of our buildings have implemented preventative measures as well, which I think are important to talk about. We have mental health therapists and youth school workers in all of our buildings. We use the conditions of learning student survey to gain information of what we can do to make our environments as safe as possible, both physically and emotionally, for our kids to hopefully stop anything before it could happen. You know, it's a priority, keeping our buildings safe, keeping our kids safe. We're always looking at more effective ways to do that, and we'll continue to. I'm sure the events last week will force us to look at those maybe deeper and in a different way than we have ever in the past. Any questions on safety plans?
I think you can do everything to keep your school safe, but if it's impossible to be completely safe. Like, I think that's important to recognize, but, and this is all good, but like is there anything more that can be done? Has law enforcement reached out to you? I know this is going to create a lot of buzz in the community. Like, I've talked to a couple officers who, said, oh, I got ideas or this or that. I mean, is it?
I talked with Bo last week. He called me right away on Thursday, actually before we were aware they were, and just to let us know that they were going to be tight to the schools throughout the day, and they were. And we're really lucky. Our police force is fantastic. They do so much to support us and keep our kids safe. We haven't had further conversations since then, but I'm sure we will. I don't know. To answer your initial question, Brent, is there more? I think your thought, what you said before, of we hope everything's, we have everything safe we can be. There's some things I don't know how to prevent. The events at Perry last Thursday, I don't know how to prevent that.
It's a student comes in, the doors are open, students are walking in. Like, if somebody wants to bring a gun, they can bring a gun. Like, I mean, it's the reality of the world we live in. But I guess, this is all good. I mean, the locked doors during, I mean, there's going to be ways if somebody really wanted to do something terrible, that something terrible could happen. But, like, I don't know, the knee-jerk reaction is like, oh, we're an armed, people are like, oh, we're going to arm teachers, or we're going to get 6 staff that are going to do that, or, we need a, security officer in the school, or, I don't know what the best answer is, but I mean, the thing in Perry, I mean, that's close to home, more than ever for us, and so, I don't know, I think it'd just be good to have a conversation with the law enforcement and see, is there anything else that reasonably can be done? I'm not talking big changes, but reasonably can be done.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because it helps to reevaluate it. So I don't know if they've reached out to you, or if Bo has, or
not since Thursday, but I'm sure Bo will. That I think we have very open and ongoing communications that we can talk about, and just ask that question. Is there something else we can do right now to make sure our buildings are safe?
I think the only thing I've been asked is is there any way to practice that? You practice tornado, you practice fire. Is there any way? I know it would be chaos if the situation happened, no matter what.
Yeah, we've practiced with our staff. We haven't practiced with students. Again, there's a lot of communication that's going on right now because of this. I don't know of a district who practices with their students yet. What we do with our high school is probably a little bit more that we talk about Alice training with our kids and how you do it. I think there's some social stories to use with our younger kids. That would be a good movement for us to move to, where it's not a trauma-causing event, but it's basically it's a story about listening to the adults in that type of situation. So our officers will provide that for us too. They have something like that.
I just think it starts when the kids are little, that you say you have full-time mental health therapists and, school social workers, and you just start with the kids when they're young, like, we're all in this together, we're all, you have to give them that sense of security when they're small, and they take it with them as they grow.
Like, I agree with
Hopefully
you.
it prevents that.
Our restorative work that we're doing with kids all the time, I think that's the most powerful stuff that we're doing. We hope that our kids feel safe, physically, emotionally, and that our buildings continue to be that way.
Well, thank you for the update, Joe. Appreciate that. I know it's all on our minds. So, all right, we'll move forward then. We have administrative report. Janie's with us tonight.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Couple things to update you on kind of my role of some of the administrative stuff. So last month, Joe talked to you a little bit about the performance profile. He kind of broke that down in his superintendent report. That is the report card, you could kind of say, that we get kind of assigned to us. And if you click one more time, you'll remember that all of our buildings were rated as commendable, which is awesome. But we thought we would just spend a little bit of time going a little bit deeper about what makes up that profile. So we're going to look a little bit at the ISASP scores. Those are what we give the kids every spring, the Iowa Statewide Assessment of Student Progress. 90% of what goes into that performance profile that we looked at last time comes from this piece of data. So we thought we would just kind of highlight a few of those. It's always given in the spring. We typically tend to do it with students 3rd through 11th grade, about middle of April. That's kind of our window that we've been doing it. But a couple highlights, and then I'll let you look a little bit deeper. And in the high school, the percent proficient on those assessments of reading, math, and science increased in every grade and every content. So 9th, 10th, and 11th all increased. The number of students who were able to show proficiency in those areas in all of ELA, math, and science. So that was really cool as a highlight. And then in math, we have, of the 9 grades that are tested, 6 of those grades are at 78% or higher. And to just kind of give you some perspective, when we start to think about what good numbers would be, and that word's even kind of, good is in the eye of the beholder, but we always say that if you have 80% of your students who are able to be proficient, that's probably pretty good, because you can support helping the other 20% who might struggle because of some different things. And so 80 is kind of that unwritten number, but we have 6 of our 9 grades that are there in math proficiency, so that's really exciting. And then it does not, in what I gave you, you won't see this, but we have some other data pieces that we look at. The percentage of our students who were advanced in ELA, so we kind of get a printout that shows students who not just met benchmarks, but were categorized as advanced. Those increased in every grade level but one. So it's not just that our students are showing proficiency. We have a lot of students who are really in an advanced category in ELA, and a lot of those are double-digit numbers, meaning that we've got, either 10% or higher of the students who are in that category of advanced. So those were some highlights that we were really, really pleased with when we kind of dug into this. And then what I gave you is, if you kind of like to look at these kind of things, this is just pretty much proficient and not proficient by grade level and by content. So just a little note on how you read it. If you go to 2023, you would see For instance, in third grade, 81% were proficient in ELA, and so then 19 were not proficient. I didn't want to just give you the numbers from 2023 because it's better to see it in context of kind of where we've been over the course of a couple years. Remember, 2020, these assessments were not given due to the spring shutdown. So that's kind of an interesting line too, because you sometimes see some of the dips the 1 or 2 years after, and then kind of see where they come up. So I'll give you just a moment to skim through those, and then if you have any interesting questions or wonders.
So when you're interpreting this, though, you have third grade, right? Math not proficient, 2022, it goes from 14 to 13%. But does that mean that, so 2022 in the third grade, should that go to fourth grade in 2023?
Yep, so if you wanted to follow like a cohort class, you would look at it on the diagonal there. And we have that. I didn't want to give you guys a lot. I tried to keep it digestible, but we do have all of that by cohort class as well. So we can see, for instance, this year's ninth graders. And we can actually look at this year's ninth graders and go back a number of years and see that cohort.
Is that improving?
Especially, you can really see some patterns from like the COVID dips. You can really see in some of the cohorts where that starts to bounce back a little bit too. And it depends by that cohort class. Sometimes, some just tend to be a little bit stronger academically, some are a little weaker academically. So, but you can kind of see that on your sheet there if you follow a diagonal as they go up.
Is this like the new basic skills? Is this what we used to call
So
basic
we would have taken basic skills, probably most of us who were Iowa students, and then we took something called just ITEDs, yeah. And then just Iowa assessments. That's what I administered to students. And now this is it's the statewide assessment that all students in the state are given.
So I'm
Yep.
looking at the 11th grade numbers, and in 2023, they're kind of shockingly low. But do you think that how much of that is due to indifference? Like they're like, not this again.
Well, actually, in 2023, they went up quite a bit. Like, so 66% were proficient in ELA as opposed to 58. So they went up quite a bit. So some of that does start to happen as it goes along, but
we can kind of clearly see that though as you're scoring them, right? Though that they're like, they don't care, they don't care, they don't care.
Well, we work really hard to not let that be something that happens because we have other data sources that we give to kids throughout the year too, and we talk a lot about what these mean and what they help with and what they show. And so one thing that we did at the high school in particular was they spent time in their advisories last year, a couple weeks before. We gave them a little sheet that showed their score from the previous years. We talked a little bit about what that means. We kind of showed, what the average was, and they kind of set a goal of where they thought they'd want to be, and we gave them just some knowledge about what this is, and kind of said, this is where you showcase to us what you know. And so we try to combat some of that. You could say that about every grade level, that they kind of have, some groups have that, but that's kind of part of our role of what we need to do as well, is to always encourage students to be doing their best on anything that they might be doing.
What's the cutoff score now for proficient and non-proficient?
So I have a chart that it would show it to you, but they're scaled scores, and so we do kind of have like a little bit of a band. It's a little bit of a range, and then they do kind of give you that one number. I don't know off the top of my head, but I could tell. I mean, every grade has kind of that one, but they tend to do it more on a range of if you're in this range of numbers instead of just one number, like we used to have. So, like it used to be like 39% of the percentile. We do have some percentile ranks, but you have to dig deep to find those. They kind of encourage us to look more at the scaled score and look at the range that they're in instead of looking at a 40th percentile rank.
Does the range change per academic?
Yep. It of course it accounts for what you should grow. What growth would look like from say a 5th grade to a 6th grade. So all of that's factored into what we get.
Kind of along those lines, and with Lainey's question too here. So is it typical for schools to see the dip between like 8th and 9th grade?
A lot of times we see dips. I think I can say across the state, because I've helped a lot of schools look at this in my previous role. Anytime you have a transition year where you go from, for us, it tends to sometimes be 4th to 5th, where we're going from elementary to middle. Other schools who have 5th grade in the elementary, it's 5th to 6th. So of course, 8th to 9th is sometimes kind of that change too, because it's a transition year that's in there too. That's usually a little typical of some things that you see too, and then you kind of, you work to sort of bounce back to where that's at. That's fairly common. But again, this is what makes up a large portion of that performance profile that we looked at last time. So those always get released in the fall. One nice thing about these assessments that we give the kids, they're done on computers. We can sometimes have preliminary data back within a couple of days. And so they get that back to us quickly. So most of the time, I kind of have a little chart on my board that Mr. Carter and I will look at. We can kind of know what your profile is going to look like based on what you see from that. Sometimes there's not big things that are shocking. And so we look at that in the spring and kind of sometimes already know what that might look like for us as well. But we were really, like I said, we were pleased with a lot of our scores, and we do see some nice movement. Sometimes there's some dips that come across too. It brings up good conversations. I think sometimes in the middle school, we found one group that I don't think they had the same math teacher in a grade for 3 or 4 years in a row. There was a lot of change in that, and that's interesting to see. So some of that kind of makes good questions for us to ask as well.
Is there a way to trace this base to use it on teacher performance and effectiveness of teaching? Like, is there a way to pattern, like we see a dip here traditionally because,
Of course, we can look at it for multiple things, and we have some of that because it's broken down by, we can look at it by students in a particular section and all those kind of things too. I can't say that we have looked at that because there's a lot of factors that go into that too, especially when you start to think about a student who might receive a lot of support from a special ed teacher. Well, then what's their role and how this should look versus the gen ed teacher? So there's a few questions that sometimes get answered, but it could be something that could be looked at. And we have other data sources that we look at for some of that same things too, like our screenings that we give 3 times a year. If those all looked similar, there could be conversations about competency, but that's probably already being come up with by administratively through reviews and all that we do with teachers. So this is currently not one factor that we use as part of that.
And kind of along those lines, there's some really fantastic scores that, Lainey was just showing me, like the 90% in 21 when 4th grade, and we got a 92 in 8th grade ELA in 22. Are we able to dig in at this point on what happened? It was really spectacular. And
We ask those questions all the time, and sometimes we have a pretty clear answer, like, oh, this is now the first group in the middle school who had the math curriculum as a 4th grade, where we had a math curriculum in 3rd and 4th, and now it stems on. Or sometimes on the opposite end of it, we can say, oh, we went from 90 minutes of math instruction to now 45 math. And so if we see dips on the other side of it, we ask a lot of questions from that. And that's usually where we start, sometimes administratively and then in leadership teams. And hey, what is this? What do you think? What do you see? And we love it when we can find like a pinpoint, let's replicate that and see what we can do. Sometimes they're a little harder to find, but we ask those questions with a lot of this data. And I think that's what it's best for, is using it to ask those questions.
When we have consistency in staffing, that's when we're able to use that, I think.
Better.
Yeah, and usually when we have consistency in staffing, that's when we see really high scores.
Yeah.
Which, again, our ability to attract and retain teachers to our district it's always been important. It's never been more important with the current teacher shortage, and keeping teachers here to work with our people and to work with kids over time is what impacts kids the most.
Now, we worked hard the last few years on curriculum alignment.
Yep.
And this is the key to it.
Yep.
And on the teacher shortage, if you go ahead a a little bit more. I just wanted to give you one little piece of nugget to another thing that I wanted to share with you. Algona is part of a consortium that we're part of the Teacher Paraeducator Registered Apprentice Program. TPRA is the acronym for it because we love a good acronym. This is, and Mr. Carter, correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, but this is a federal ESSER money that the state of Iowa is using to help kind of eliminate some of the, well, maybe not eliminate the teacher shortage, but make some paths easier for people to become teachers. And so there's two paths to it that the grant does. There's actually one where students who are still in high school can become paraeducators, and then they could eventually get on a path to become teachers. We do not have any in that program. We decided to start with something a little bit easier and see where it would expand. But we do have people who are currently paraeducators for us who are taking classes and doing some work to become teachers, and kind of a little bit more of a streamlined way. And so if you kind of keep clicking, a few of the things that we do have is we have 3 people in the program. We did have 4, right now we have 3 people who are in it. They complete their coursework through Western Governors University. WGU is who they go through. That was actually a choice that was kind of made by our consortium. We had to join a larger group to do this, so some of it was kind of out of our hands. It's kind of neat. Our paraeducators are able to use the work they do in a classroom, which is so similar to what teachers do, and they get to kind of draw on those background experiences and work that in as part of kind of some of their student teaching that they would do. They don't have to take time off too much to student teach. A lot of that can be done within the district. And where we're at right now is 2 of our candidates should be ready to be done by the end of the semester. They'll do kind of their formal student teaching in the fall and then be done with the program. And then our 3rd one should be done by the end of the school year next year with that. So that's.
We have a 4th person who
Yes.
is not in our program, is actually in the UNI Purple Pathways program. So their tuition's not being paid, although we do partner with UNI in providing
Yep.
their opportunities. So we really have 4 people who in a few years will basically learn their trade working for us. And that's a great thing.
Yep.
This, like Janie said, we received ESSER dollars from the federal government, so did states, and the state of Iowa chose to use a part of those dollars towards this program, which was a great use of funds. It goes away. I really believe the state will try to keep this program in place, and
Yes.
hopefully there's a lot of
Few less restrictions would be nice.
It'll be a lot better if it's not, if it's local, and we
Yeah.
can just work with our people. So
Yep.
I think this is the type of thing that allows a district to overcome the shortage on their own, which is what we want.
Yep.
We think we can do that. We can help develop teachers if we have some
Yep.
programs in place. Let's do it.
And I should have noted 3 of the people are receiving theirs in elementary education K-6 with 1 more of a middle school focus, and 1 is actually on a secondary path, secondary math, which is really nice. You don't always see a lot of people who want to do that.
Nobody doing that.
No, not a lot of people are doing that. So kind of nice homegrown people, and paraeducators do so much of a lot of what sometimes teachers do. And this is kind of a nice way to honor a little bit of that for some people who maybe took a less traditional path too.
So are they incentivized to stay here? Do they have to, like, pay the district back by
No.
teaching here for 2
They don't.
years, 4 years?
Nope.
They
No?
don't.
They can take it and run?
They
Okay.
could take it and run.
Okay.
Okay.
The 3 in the TPRA, I think all 4 would say without a doubt they would rather work here.
But we were not allowed to, that wasn't
Right.
part of it either. We weren't allowed to say that per that program.
Moving ahead, I think, again, with local flexibility, those would be things that
We could.
include, which would
Yep.
be beneficial.
Yep. So we pay their tuition through WG for it, and then, of course, they continue to work for us, and so that's kind of where the grant money kind of comes from, is from that. We haven't received it yet, but we know it takes a lot of red tape to get through some of that, so. Anything else for me? Otherwise, those were 2 little pieces I just wanted to update you on.
I do too, and obviously concerned when you see 39% and 40% not proficient. So it's good to see it improving, and there is a trend.
Yep.
I see that, but you brought up in last year, I remember talking about the 80%,
Yep.
being the goal number. Is that actually a district goal? Is that something that, I feel that should be something that is down, that is, you
Yeah.
don't have goals, you don't know what to work towards, and I think.
Until this year, we had to write those types of goals for the state. The 80 number comes from, it's probably a research practice, that if you have 80% of your kids proficient, it's not a universal instruction thing then. Your instruction's good. The other 20% probably needs support in certain
Yeah,
areas.
no, I recognize that you're not gonna get to 100% proficient.
Yeah.
That's just the nature of social situations, kids' ability to learn. But I would think that it could be better than,
Yeah. Yeah.
60% proficient, and
Absolutely,
Oh,
yep,
I do
yep.
think that it, in some way, shape, or form, it ought to be strive towards.
Yep.
And if we don't actually, I think as a board, like, we do finances, we approve, new projects and all that sort of stuff, but at the end of the day, like, we as a board are responsible for holding all the educators accountable. That's what we're elected for, to make sure. And last year, I shared this number with some people, just in conversation, and I think people are shocked to find out, 60%. I know we can look at other schools and districts our size, and I don't think we're too far off from everybody, but I mean, we're outgoing and we tout our being the best, I think we can do better than this still. And we're headed towards that way, but I think it'd be.
We can certainly make some goals and then report back on those, on some things that would be for it. Especially looking at some things, of also some goals that make sense. If we do have a class that is a little bit lower, to go from 60% proficient to 80 in 1 year would be, we'd step that along the way a little bit. But if we do have some that are at ones, we could push for that. So that's a good suggestion that we can
Because at the
take
end
those
of
on.
the day, you look at this 11th grade, I know COVID, but like in 2022, there was 46% of that class graduated or in 11th grade
Yeah.
not proficient. And that's half.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the data is, 12th grade there, but they must not take assessments.
They don't, and sometimes 12th graders don't take math because, 3 years. So there's a few little things with that as well, so.
I just, if there's one thing that I care about more than a field house project and all this other stuff, it's at the end of the day, this is what matters.
Yep.
To me, is the proficient, are we actually graduating kids, and is there a trend? And, we can only blame COVID for so long, that's 3, years ago, and
Yep.
so we have to do.
That's why I asked why, if the 11th grade was a difference, like, not this again,
But it's 11th grade, it's not even senior, right? It's-
Yeah, and it might have been in some previous years. Again, that's why knowledge of these, we really talked a lot with the high school teachers. One other thing on that, we don't have just the ELA and the math teachers give the assessment. They're given in their advisories. Everybody is knowledgeable about it. And I think there's a lot of good culture that kind of comes from that when an industrial tech teacher cares just as much about how you do in math as your math teacher does. That feels really good. And so we did a little bit of work on that too, so that everybody kind of has a little bit of a role in that as well. To get to that point of we want academics to be good across the board. So, and that was the first year we kind of really dug into that last year. So a little bit of that could have been from previous years too, but.
And I think we have to keep in mind too, this is one test
Yep.
given on one day.
Yep.
Is that how we wanna evaluate our, how everything goes is on that one test, that one day? It makes it kinda tough, cause, we have 100 kids out for track and maybe the day before they didn't, maybe they didn't get home till midnight. And, there's all those variables that we need to keep in mind.
This is
too.
one piece on our assessment plan. We do give the kids those screeners 3 times a year, and a lot of times that helps us also look at some things as well, but to that point of we don't want to just look at, one thing. So, and that's usually what we make some goals from then, based on some of those cohorts, so. Good stuff, always on the pulse of it's always in our forefront.
I'm keep beating a dead horse. I do think that we need to get better. And I know we're working towards that. I know the teachers want that. I know you want that.
Yeah.
But I would love to see,
90s.
This is our, well, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's attainable.
But it can be better than where it's at.
Yep.
So I think this is the bare minimum
Yep.
proficient, you know.
We're working on it.
So, I mean, what's the goal?
Well, right now, we've kind of set our goal as 80. I mean, that's what we go to, is we want to try to get to 80. But we actually have more goals around growth, like a percentage of, we want 90% of our kids to grow. And so those are all in some things that we have to, we kind of submit to the state. But I didn't bring you that now. But we look at a little bit of that way. Because if we have 90% of our kids growing, eventually we'll get those kids to proficiency then as well. So. Thank you.
for the report. I appreciate it. Yep. All right, good conversations. We'll move into old business and a thick packet of second reading of board policies.
Yep, so the second reading, most important is this, the blue chart on the front. So this is the Iowa Association of School Boards. They give us some policies to review. Lisa has created a schedule, and from those things, so listed on the left is the policy, for example, 409.7, licensed employed military service leave. The last time it was reviewed in our district was October. It is not a required policy. We are reviewing it. There's no changes to be recommended because ISB does not have a policy. So that's how this table works. So you can see in this month, the only one that had a change was 50302 expulsion. So it was last reviewed about a year ago. It is a required. It does need review. Then it goes into paragraph 1, which then you can go all the way to the end of that right here. Paragraph 1 is different. These two parts were not in the IASB, so we removed those to align with the Association of School Boards policy and change paragraph 1 to reflect that. So that's how we're organizing those, trying to make it a simpler process for everyone. Again, that's an old business, so everything that we reviewed last month, expulsion is a required mandatory policy. I would recommend changing to the ISB sample policy, which is a change in paragraph 1. And then reviewing all those others that no change is recommended.
Any more comments or thoughts? If not, we would need a motion to approve the second reading of the board policy.
Make a motion to approve second reading of board policies as presented.
Thank you, Tom. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Brent. Any further discussion?
The only question I have is, in some of these, I see several options. Option 1, option 2, option 3.
Are they policies we have?
No, I don't think so. Maybe, is that just what you're giving us option if we wanted to have that policy?
If you were going to have them, then you would choose.
Got it, okay.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none then, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Policies approved. All right, moving into new business, we've got first readings of policies. It's kind of look the same, but they're first.
It is. So the first reads for January 2024, policy 5014, which is the entrance admissions. That's not a required policy. We'll review it. 5015, then we do not have that policy. 5016, student transfers in. No recommended changes. 5016 R1, non-accredited schools transfer, again, no changes recommended. Student transfers out, no changes recommended, and students attendant records, no changes recommended. Then we go into 4013, staff technology use. Recommend to revise that. First of all, change the policy number to 713 and change the name to responsible technology use and social networking. Languages changes noted on the copy that's in what we provided. The highlighted areas are new. The word computer is changed to technology. because when we're talking about staff and students, we're not just talking about computers, we're also talking about phones and other devices. So strike through the language that was deleted on the recommended policy. 401 13R1, again, the staff technology use regulation, again, changing the number to 713R1 and the name. 50207, smoking, drinking, and drugs. The title's changed to student substance abuse. Most of the language is the same. First paragraph in the ISB policy is new. The first is new, and we would adopt that. 60506, internet appropriate use. The first three paragraphs in the ISB policy are new, and we would revise to add those. 6056R1, internet appropriate use regulation. There's some highlighted areas in there that have some language changes that we would want to revise. 70101, depository of funds. Policy isn't required, but the content is. So currently, we do this. The depositories are named annually. This policy allows the district to update the resolution every 5 years or when changes need to be made. So we wouldn't have to do that annually in that place like we currently do every, yeah, we had to change it a number of times. So putting it as a board policy allows us not to have to revisit as often. 7102, the transfer of funds, would revise, language added due to the legislative changes to allow a transfer of teacher staff salary supplement, PD, talented and gifted teacher leader, without board action. This is very important to us, as with the educational savings account, we will receive money in all of those categories for every student from our district who receives an educational savings account. So those are dollars that before we would have had to get board approval to move those dollars into different accounts. Now we can just put them in general fund and pay teachers with them or whatever we need to. So that's a good change. And 7103, budget planning, revised to add for the language to be changed to match the change in the budget process. So those are the first reads. Nothing to do with that, but so that you see them, you can ask questions, concerns for those, and we would have the second reading in February.
All right, any thoughts or comments before we'll look at them again next month? All right, we'll move on then to the second part of our B, accept early retirement application.
We had one early retirement application that was submitted. The applicant has met all the criteria, and I would recommend accepting the application from Jean Davis. And thank Jean for all of her years of service to the district.
Motion to approve resignation.
Thank you, Brent. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Lanny. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I'll abstain. All right, moving then on to classified early retirement program.
In November, as part of my report, we discussed the possibility of a classified early retirement program. In 2021, we passed an early retirement program for classified staff. At that time, to be eligible for the program, a person must have 25 years of full-time service in the district. The benefit at that time was also 25% of the employee's previous year's earnings plus $25 per unused sick day. We have 10 staff members who would be eligible for this program. Replacing all 10 would, at entry-level wages, would possibly save $80,000. The one-time cost would be $120,000. I would recommend this program this year with a cap of 5 applicants for the 23-24 school year. As we continue to talk about this in different years, I would also recommend that if we have a teacher early retirement program in place, we have this classified early retirement program in place. The benefit is different. There's not a savings for the district like there is in a teacher retirement program. This is a program for people who have worked hourly in the district for 25 years or more. We have 150 employees who are classified staff in the Algonah Community School District. You know, we all would like to pay them more. We would. We've talked a lot about that, you know, rather than look at these programs, let's just pay them more. Funding really doesn't allow us to do that. And annual funding changes don't allow us to make drastic changes because we never know if they're going to be sustainable down the road. So I do think this is something it's something good for our people who we care about very, very much, that have worked in our district for 25 years, which is a tremendous commitment, and we thank them a lot for that. So I would recommend this program with a cap of 5 for this year, and I would also recommend that when we have a teacher program in place, this program is in place. We can never make decisions beyond this year when it comes to budget. Those are just recommendations or motions in minutes that could reflect those things.
On the application page, why does it state the equivalent full-time service in the district as a certified licensed employee or administrator?
That
Okay.
should be changed.
All right.
Yep.
Joe, can we put in the verbiage cap of 5? Just so
Yep.
it's clear, kind of
Absolutely.
minutes-wise,
Yep.
that we have discussed
We can put that
that?
into the criteria. I'd probably actually put it in the application. Yeah.
And the other thing I guess I would say is, I appreciate this, so we can appreciate our non-certified staff that have devoted so many years to the district. And I think we can all say, well, yeah, it'd be great to have this when we do early retirement for the teachers. But the reality is, when we do early retirement for the teachers, it's because of a cost savings, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
the reason why we do it.
It is.
Otherwise, we'd love to keep those teachers in the district, with their experience and all those kinds of things. I can say that would be great, but I personally, I'll commit to it if we can afford it.
Yeah.
Right, and which I know you guys aren't gonna bring things that are not financially viable for the district and that kind of thing, but I don't know what it looks like 5 years from now or 10 years from now or anything like that. So that would be my comment.
100% agree.
And I think you're right, Andrea, and I think that's probably why you don't want this to be policy, why you don't want a teacher policy, because you don't know in the day of when you can or cannot afford it. You know, to effectively utilize a retirement program, you need to prepare for it. You need to prepare your management to do that. And that's what creates the savings, is the payout of the benefit out of the management rather than the general fund. But I think you're exactly right. It can't be something that's always there, because there will be days when you can't afford to do it.
You know, I like this because I think it rewards those who have, again, stuck around for 25 years, but it's those that are behind the scenes, that don't get a lot, the glory. Every building you walk in, I'm proud to walk in there because, they're good, clean buildings, and how that phone is answered, or that guest is greeted can really send them one way or the other, and then the bus drivers and the teacher associates. It's those teacher associates. They work with our, a lot of our most needy kids, and when I taught, I know there's a lot of awesome teacher associates that, because of them, these kids were successful in school and then gonna turn on and become successful in life. And so I think it's again, and we talked about this earlier, how we'd love to pay them more, we'd love to give them $20 an hour, but it's just not feasible, and this is something we can do and to reward those who have stuck around for 25 plus years.
Other comments on that?
I don't want to be bound. It's a great idea and it makes us look good, but it's setting up the future board for policy or comments that we're making, but I don't think it's good to do that. I think we need to vote and reassess every time a teacher. I don't think it needs to be attached to it.
The teacher one would also have to be
No, the
built down
teacher
rent.
does too. No, I understand that, but like, you know,
You're
people
just
have talked, people have talked to me and said, last time this, and
Yeah.
this was promised to me.
Right, we
because
don't
of
want to
this."
set precedent.
No,
I
I
mean,
don't want to set a
every time
precedent.
it's
If we
like,
can afford it and we can reward people and it can be reassessed by future boards. I mean, the thing is 10 years from now, none of us may be on this board, and if we're saying this is traditionally what this board has done, and it's reflected in the minutes that this is what we intend to do, then I think it is, it's hamstringing a future superintendent, it's hamstringing future board members, and if it's something that we as a board want to do and take ownership for, because this is taxpayer money, this is not our money, you know, this is, people are being taxed to reward employees, and we think it's a good policy, that's why we're elected, I get that, but I do not want to say that this is something that is promised to 5 years from now when we do another teacher's, you know, because we're trying to save the district money and keep the financial and write a financial ship. This is not something, and I know it's not a huge expense, but it's still what, $100,000, $180,000?
Typically, the
120.
benefit's about 10 to 13 per employee, so if you had 10, it'd be 100, you know. I think we'd have closer to 2 to 3, so it'd be a 20 to 30
It's still,
ish.
it's still, I mean, we can afford it, the district's in a good place, we, you know, consolidate with Laverne, we have some, you know, 25-year employees that do this. I mean, the sick benefits make a lot of sense to me, you know, because it rewards people that have showed up to work, it's actually saved that. I would even, you know, rather have it be, you know, $25 per unused sick day. I mean, to me, it makes more sense if it's, you know, whatever their pay would have been, $100 per sick day, because ultimately that's just them working harder and saving the district money, you know. But, you know, 25% of last year's contract earning, I mean, that's, I get it, it's good, I want to reward people. I mean, I appreciate people, but it's not our money that we're, you know, we're not in business. I mean, we're a taxpayer, we're responsible for that, and I think it's bad policy to make it, say, hey, we're gonna do this every time. Last time we did this, I believe I said the same exact thing. Like, this is not tied to this will be reassessed. And people that have approached me about it have said, you know, this was promised to me, you know, this was the expectation. And so it's just not good policy for us to make a future superintendent and a future board responsible for something that is actually not saving the district money.
Makes sense. So what you're basically saying is that if we do approve it this year, and I know you said you wanted to, maybe if we brought teachers back, we'd bring this back. We don't have to.
You don't want that language in
You
there.
don't
I
want
don't
that
want it to be
language.
5 years from now to an employee who's been here 20 years, say, so-and-so got it,
Yep.
and it was specific towards them, you know, and why is it not towards me? You know, why did they get it and not get it? This should have been, you guys set the precedent. This is, to me, if we approve this, this is not a precedent 5 years from now or 10 years from now, that every time we do an early retirement to save the district money. I mean, the whole idea of an early retirement to me also is like, I struggle with, I know it's a cost-saving thing. I don't actually think it's necessarily the best education-wise for kids, you know? You're losing good employees, but you're keeping the financial shit going. It makes, you know, it's a business decision, you know? This is, yes, maybe we're a good place to work, we're this, but it's financially binding future superintendents. I mean, I think you're seeing that a little bit with what was promised by previous administration. You know, saying, Joe, this was this. How could the district, how could you do this to me? Sort of thing. Employees are not wrong in saying that, but we need to make it very clear, we can afford this now. This is not a promise thing. You know, it's classified employees are no less important than, you know, our teachers. They make it happen, like Todd said, but this is a business decision. We can afford it now, let's do it, but I don't want, it's 5 years from now when I'm not on the board, or you guys aren't on the board, or Joe's not here, you know, whatever, 10 years. It's a precedent. It's kind of what you're saying, right? Yeah.
That's what I heard Andrew saying as well, is we can do it now,
we can
do
afford it.
But if
We want to
can't-
appreciate, but yeah, in the future, I don't want that to be like a foregone conclusion that that's what people have in their minds.
Yeah.
Isn't that what number 5 says? This policy may be modified or terminated before application.
And that actually allows us to modify or terminate it during this year, is that legal term, but
people have approached me and said, this was done the last time it was done. I was promised, I was close last time, or this, you know, and I didn't do it because I thought it would be in place in 5 years. Now it's 5 years later, and I can't, you know, I can't take advantage of this. I feel bad if that's what was said.
Maybe they reread it incorrectly, though,
But
because it
I
doesn't
think,
say that.
I don't want it to reflect in the minutes that every time we do an early retirement for teachers, that we're going to do an early retirement,
For or for certified staff, yeah,
you know.
great.
But, I mean, that's what I want reflected in the minutes.
Yep.
I have, you want me, I can tell you what I wrote. This is a one-time benefit that must be brought to the board for consideration, and it's not guaranteed for future years nor is it precedent.
It's very clear. We can afford it. I think it's good policy. You know, if you can afford it, reward your teachers. You're not your teachers, but your employees, and treat them well. But that's my opinion as an elected board member right now in all of ours. It doesn't mean that it's the future superintendent or the future board to do.
So we're looking to then approve the early retirement for the classified staff, again, for this school year, 23-24, up to 5. Maximum of 5.
Oh, up to 5 people.
Yes.
Capped at 5.
Capped at 5, with the language that Lisa kind of read to us, that she has written down. So I would need
Are we
then.
voting on this, or is this just?
This is an action.
This is an action item, yep. So we would need a motion then for approval.
So moved.
Thanks, Andrea. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Lanny. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Further retirement, our program approved for this year. All right, open enrollment.
How does this apply to anybody that is already?
Yeah, anyone who, the language in there is anyone who retires during this school year, 23-24 school year. Open enrollment, we have 7, or we have 4. The word 7 and the number 4. We have 4 open enrollment applications that have been provided and have met the guidelines for approval.
Okay, we need a motion to approve the open enrollments then.
So moved.
We got a motion and a second. Jay and Don. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Resignations.
Resignations, we have Jean Davis, who is retiring from the district as interventionist Title I and homeschool coordinator. Shelley Ellison, teacher associate at Harrigan. Teresa Keeker, who is also retiring, high school secretary. Jake Adams from freshman baseball. Jordan Gorham as a middle school teacher associate, and Danelle Van Gorkum as our games coach.
All right, with those, we need a motion then for approval.
Make a motion to approve the resignations.
Thanks. Tom, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Brent, motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resignations accepted. And then looks like a couple contracts.
2 contracts, Ashley Reynolds, middle school teacher associate, and Jake Adams, we just approved resigning freshman to take JV baseball.
Motion for your contract approval, please.
Motion to approve.
Thanks, Brent. Second.
Second?
Thanks, Andrea. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Contract's approved. All right, we will then need a roll call, I believe, isn't it, to go into closed session here under 21.51I to evaluate the professional competency of an individual whose appointment